Coming to you live from Cultura Media House. Presented to you by 786 Sports. It's El Big League Show. With Adrian Lorenzo. And now batting, here's Danny Enriquez.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to El Big League Show. My name is Danny Enriquez. We are in the best time of the year. Transactions are great. We love the deadline, but this is what it's all about, playoff baseball. Here to talk about it with someone who's been in playoff baseball, whether it was during a bubble or in the World Series. He's seen it all at this level. That is the one and only Adrian Lorenzo. Adrian, how we doing?
Best time of the year, like you said. I'm doing great. Happy to be talking postseason baseball. We took a little bit of a hiatus, just to let the postseason play out a little bit and not immediately react to the wild card series. But there's a lot to react to, so I'm glad. Let's dive right in.
So just big picture before we get into like team by team, right? A lot of trends we're seeing interesting moves with the bullpen. Some teams are flourishing, others are falling by the wayside. What are some big picture takeaways up to this point in the playoffs for you?
I think it's something we've talked about before, that you're roster constructing for two different kinds of seasons. One is the long haul of 162, and the other one is this postseason sprint, or a little bit of a modified sprint. It's kind of like it's not a 100-yard dash. It's more like an 800, because you gotta persevere through it. It's a pretty lengthy postseason when you tally it all up. So, and some of these clubs are showing that they're built to withstand 162, and then in a truncated series where the magnifying glass gets put on defense, base running, contactability, like those kinds of things get put at a premium, and the roster holes show up to a certain extent. The Yankees stand out to me from that standpoint, right? Again, right? Like there was some of this last year, even though they made it to all the way to the World Series last year. So, but that you could build an offensive juggernaut that could so far and away lead all of baseball offensively throughout the course of the year, and then pretty much fall short convincingly, right? Like the Blue Jays handed them a pretty convincing series loss, and some of their holes were pretty glaring in the postseason. But it just shows that you have to build it for the longer 180 games plus kind of season, and that's not an easy thing. I thought the Phillies were built to withstand the longer run, but then sometimes you also just run into a team that's better. Even if you're very good, you run into a team that's better. To me, like the Dodgers, it's the reason I can never not have the Dodgers as favorites, and it's showing in this postseason run that they're able to withstand postseason baseball after performing really well over 162, and that's why I think you see them where they're at. I thought the Phillies were going to be a really tough matchup for them, but in reality, it was another pretty convincing series win, regardless of how that one game ended. But big picture takeaways is that the little things show up. The defense shows up. The pitching shows up. The reliever matchups show up. And any small mistake or error over the course of the execution of the game, and those things really get magnified and could cost you series. And so that's what I'm seeing. Like some teams are built for 162, and some teams are built to kind of push past that. And the one thing that really stands out to me as well is the Blue Jays. I feel like we didn't give the Blue Jays, maybe the entire MLB didn't give the Blue Jays enough credit throughout the course of the year. I don't know why. Maybe it's because they weren't there last year, and they're not the immediate name that comes to mind in the AL East. But right now, it's kind of hard to argue against them, right? They're just playing really, really good baseball. And even though they're down 1-0 in this CS series, but they really stood out to me in how they handled the Yankees, how they sprinted to a division title, and how they handled the Yankees. So those are a few big picture takeaways.
You mentioned situational baseball, two of the teams you talked about. The Yankees last year, that was kind of the story of their exit amongst everything else. The Philadelphia Phillies, we were going to final story was that did the you just lose track of the outs? Like what happened there on that final play with the Phillies and trying to throw home instead of to first? I thought he just lost track of the outs, but I don't know if that was ever explained afterwards or what sense you got of it.
Sometimes the moment gets really big. And this is where I go back to the playoff clubs that are constructed with a lot of like experienced postseason players, and the Phillies were. But in that moment, Kerkering was not necessarily, right? And I thought that showed up. I think the deer in the headlights, analogy makes sense to me here, and I think unfortunately, I think he just panicked in that moment. I think it's a tough way to learn a lesson, but I think, hopefully he gets to the other side of this, because that's the kind of error that could stick around with you for a long time. But that said, I didn't see that the Phillies lost the series because of that, right? Like the Phillies lost the series because the Dodgers were a better team for the postseason ball. And that's with a struggling Ohtani. They still are able to persevere and win. And they played better when the moment mattered. And I thought the Phillies just came up short when the moments mattered the most. It's interesting that we're seeing so many offensively driven teams, and all of a sudden in the postseason, everybody's struggling to score. I think that it kind of puts a premium on matchup baseball, how good pitching is, how good your relievers are. Like you're not really seeing, like garbage time doesn't exist in the postseason. You're not seeing the fluffy ends of your roster. Every roster spot is at a premium. If you're putting somebody on your 13 position players and in your 13 pitchers, it's because they have a significant purpose and a targeted use case for them to be on that roster. There's no fluff to any of those rosters, including emergency base runners, right? So I took a long-winded way to answer the one question, but that's what showed up to me quite a bit here.
And guys that aren't even part of your team that really got you there, like you Savage for the Blue Jays, obviously a huge talent, and that talent moving to the forefront real quick here in the postseason. We'll get to that. Yes, Phillies also, it's interesting. The Dodgers are now one of the healthiest staffs in baseball. After all these times where they've been injured, now here when they need them the most, they got, pretty much everybody. Phillies without Wheeler. So that's a huge difference, obviously, in that series that it's not fun to talk about, but it's one of those things. It's reality. So that to me, I had Dodgers over Mariners. That's still alive. We'll see if that plays out. But to me, the rotation and now the bullpen, the back end of the bullpen, which we'll get to in a second with the Dodgers. Un podcast de los mayores says Brewers 6-0 this season versus the Dodgers. Go Brewers. That's going to be an interesting series, kind of the low payroll versus the highest.
Shout out Un podcast.
Shout out Un podcast. Yeah, man, we're talking about their pronunciations of some.
No, they should know that I've been using them to prepare for this podcast. So I get to watch them Thursdays, and it'll help me prepare. So gracias. I get to prepare utilizing their content, because I think that they're doing a really, really nice job. That's our Spanish language baseball podcast on 786 Sports, and I thought they touched on a lot of really interesting items. They dove deeply into this Phillies Dodgers series, because you mentioned a lot of players that we didn't factor in as much during the regular season, but have shown up in the postseason. Tyler Glasnow was unbelievable the other day.
Yep.
Right, where he gets kind of forgotten amongst all the names that they have over there, but then he shows up and it's ace quality stuff that to carry you through an entire start right when you needed him to. And that one really stood out. And you thought that they were the most concerning team from a health standpoint over the course of the regular season. Yet, this is what I love about, they're built for this part of the year. They also have really strong regular season numbers as well, right? But they're built for this part in particular, and it really showed up, I thought, in this series versus the Phillies.
And shout out to everybody in the comments. J24 Robes, best time of the year. I'm thinking back a while now. It's crazy how much time has passed. I don't think I was even in college when K-Rod was really rolling. It was in college. But K-Rod, I'm thinking back to him, what he did with the Angels, some of these names, whether it's Sasaki or Misaelowski, just like these young fireball, even though they're starters by trade, just these difference-making young arms. That, to me, probably my biggest takeaway of this latest just round of results is those special arms who had kind of inconsistent pass. When you look at Misaelowski in the second half, he had Sasaki, all the injuries he had, and now they're making an impact. And again, you got to go back, at least in Misaelowski's case, to K-Rod, who's the last rookie to get 2 wins out of the pen, first 2 postseason games of his career. These guys have never played at this level, being in the postseason baseball. They've had to go through a lot of struggles, and now huge difference makers, really just because of their raw kind of talent. And then, of course, the mental fortitude to withstand all they dealt with. Let's start with Sasaki, because we're on the Dodgers. Interesting player because he was not Yamamoto coming in with the huge contract. His contract was very unique, very valuable from the moment it was signed because of the scale. Hurts his shoulder, which we think back to some of the great talents that have been lost to shoulder injuries. I mean, it's not Tommy John, as we know. That could be a career ender, even now with modern medicine. And then now here where he's landed. Just take me through from a front office perspective, acquiring a player like Sasaki, preserving a player like Sasaki, and then ultimately pulling the trigger and saying, this is the role he's going to play to help us win a championship.
Well, just to kind of distinguish, let's use Yamamoto as a teammate, as a different type of example. Yamamoto comes over through the posting system as a true free agent, as a professional free agent, right? Therefore, he's able to garner a $300 million deal. Sasaki comes over before his posting time as an amateur, right? So he gets in the amateur, I believe the cap for an entire team to spend on an amateur international bonus pool, I think is like close to $7 million this year. So like no team could have spent more than that to acquire Roki Sasaki, right? So it wasn't a money-driven decision as to where Sasaki would decide to land or to end up. But I will say that it's the decision or the recruiting pitch that could most change the trajectory of a front office, because you're effectively getting talent level. It's a comparable, if not higher upside than even a Yamamoto in terms of the talent level, because of the youth component as well. But you're able to get him for a $6 million, whatever the signing bonus ends up being, cost to acquire. It's very similar to the Ohtani situation. Ohtani signing with the Angels.
First one, yeah.
The first one, correct. Yes. His first landing in U.S. baseball, where he arrived as an amateur, even though he was technically a professional. It's really it's a rules catch up, right? And honestly, you got to give it to Sasaki, where he is willing to gamble on himself, knowing that he's leaving however much money on the table, right, to come in as an amateur versus a professional. But he does that. But so how do you land Roki Sasaki as an amateur? Basically, it's telling you that he's not going to choose the Dodgers over, let's call it the Rangers, over $1 million in difference, right? Because he's probably going to make that up in off the field sponsorships. Like, that's not the signing bonus here isn't where the bulk of the value is going to be assigned, right? He's going to select a place where he gets to pitch in the big leagues right away, right? Gets assigned to a major league roster. So that's a big one, right? Like I have to imagine that part of his mandate, right, part of his requirement to sign with a major league team is that they're going to put him on the 26-man active major league roster. And at 22 years old, when he was signing, that's not a given. As we've explained before, it's not easy to just survive on a 13 and 13 26-man roster. So the Dodgers had to have made a case where we're assigning you to the major league roster. But that's no walk in the park for a starting pitcher. Right? If he's a starting pitcher, which he was, entering into this Dodgers rotation that's full of names, Glasnow, Snell, Yamamoto, Kershaw, et cetera, he was kind of it was an uphill climb to be able to prove, no matter how good you are, that you can slot into that rotation. So, and what happened when he first got in, it wasn't clear that he was in that top 5 rotation next to all those names. So then the Dodgers get put into a bit of a bind. Like, you don't just toss them into the bullpen, because the progression for a starter versus the progression for a bullpen piece are completely different. And for a starter versus reliever, a starter you can control when he comes into a game. Every 5 days, he has his in between games routine. For a reliever, you don't know how you're going to utilize that pitcher. You don't know how consistently you're going to be able to utilize that pitcher. And if he's got starter length, you're not just going to use him for 1-inning bursts. But then you don't really know when you're going to be able to use him for a 3-inning burst. So it's a tricky way to integrate him into the major leagues, but they have to keep him in the big leagues. They have no ability to option him down to the minor leagues. And so he stumbles a little bit. Maybe he isn't, I don't know that it was a shoulder injury. It feels like he just, as a 23-year-old, hadn't built himself up from a velocity standpoint to be where you would expect his prime performance to be. So if you're watching MPB baseball, when or the WBC, for example,
Yeah.
you're watching him at, 99 to 101, and all of a sudden in spring training or in the early big leagues, he's showing up at 95, 96. He doesn't really have that same effectiveness. And I think it doesn't feel like there was a structural injury that he was placed on the IL for, but maybe more of a lack of buildup or lack of being there at that point. And I think that his IL stint allowed the Dodgers to attack his progression in a way that was most beneficial for him to impact them at this part of the season instead of push. And there were times where they needed starting pitching arms,
yep.
but that wasn't the priority wasn't placed on him. Just let's get a starter back as quickly as possible. The priority was placed on let's make sure that this talent is available to us toward the back end of the season. And that's looking like a really well made decision, really well thought out process, because he has shown up and immediately been the top reliever in this postseason.
Yeah.
Not only to give you an inning of lights out dominance, but multiple innings. I think he retired his first 6 batters through three shutout innings the other day. And it was some of those at bats were borderline non-competitive against some of the best hitters in the world. So we were talking about Sasaki and Misaelowski, like what's the common theme amongst these young guys being able to come in and have the impact of stuff?
Yeah.
Show up with elite level stuff.
104 miles an hour from Misaelowski.
Elite level stuff. That splitter from Sasaki, his ability to kill those RPMs on that splitter, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But then also credit to him to the command, the poise, and the strike throwing to come in these like really high leverage, high intensity situations for a young kid and shove the way he did. Right, like he looked like he could have thrown 6 strong innings the way he was going. But I got to tip my hat to the Dodgers, and this is when you want to look at your best, and this is when they look their best. And I think it's because of decisions like Roki Sasaki.
Yeah, electric just to watch the energy when he's out there. You mentioned it almost looked not competitive at times, which is crazy for this postseason with the players that are out there. I think back to you were this is just a recent example because we were in the trenches on this. You in particular with when the Miami Hurricanes college baseball team put one of their starting pitchers who had been struggling in the closer role, it not only impacted the end of games, it was just a whole level of energy throughout the whole program. They made a big run. Now the Dodgers, they're the defending champs. They got the most talent in the game, so they don't necessarily need that boost. But this feels to me, especially with Tanner Scott's struggles, like it just feels like a boost of energy at the right time to kind of carry even a team that has the talent to another level.
No doubt. No doubt. And that's what's showed up. And to be fair, like the rest of that Dodgers bullpen has also been very, very good. And their starting pitching overall has been excellent. So I don't want Sasaki being so good shouldn't just, this whole team isn't riding on the shoulders of Sasaki, but it is interesting how well they've performed without much production from Ohtani. Right. And I don't think that that's going to be sustained. I think Ohtani will show up as we, in this CS and in this World Series, because I don't think you can keep that. I don't think you can contain that for as long as it's been contained early on.
And got a win with 9 strikeouts, just in the middle of that slump. Just a nice little win on the mound just to kind of get you through there. So,
and the Dodgers do they pulled off a wheel play the other day
I was about to ask
in a bunt situation that I thought was really they show up defensively in the postseason. In spite of a few miscues from Teoscar Hernandez early in the postseason in right field. And he's not a defensively oriented player because he shows up offensively big time for them in a lot of clutch situations. But they play really clean defensive baseball, and they pulled off that wheel play, which is them shortstop breaking to third base. The bunt's coming. Max Muncy turns around and makes a nice throw to Mookie right there. But that's a highly coordinated play that I think a lot of teams are apprehensive to pull off because a lot could go wrong. You throw that ball into left field, the run scores. But they do a lot of little things in the postseason that really, to me, highlight just how well equipped they are for the postseason. And I mean, can we spotlight Mookie Betts for a second?
Yeah, I was going to say, I pulled up his stats here for the year. So career OPS plus of 135, one of the best hitters around for many, many years. This year, OPS plus 104. So still above league average, but not to the degree we've seen in the past. But with that, still almost a 5-WAR player.
Yep.
And the defensive evolution, which you've seen firsthand from throwing with him in the outfield to now, is he the best defensive shortstop in the game or one of them? I mean, it's crazy.
Most defensive run saved of all MLB shortstops this year.
Crazy.
For a I think if you
33
asked
years
him,
old,
he was
too.
always a shortstop that then got moved around for other reasons. But circling back to be playing this kind of defense, and there were some plays there that aren't like the fancy diving plays that, you know, that kind of catch your attention, but there were some plays, slow rollers, choppers, balls on the run that just played really crisply, played really cleanly. And for him to be doing this, like you're switching positions at an age where you shouldn't be doing this necessarily, I think is very, very impressive. He also gave a really interesting interview the other day where he was talking about the impact of Miguel Rojas being a teammate of his, Miguel Rojas is an elite level shortstop defender, and how much that's been able to be did he say blessing or saving grace this season in terms of his evolution as a shortstop, to have a player, not just a coach coaching you through it, but a player talking you through the nuances of that position. And I thought that was really, really interesting because, again, going to the Dodgers, like the things that they prioritize, the things that they know that they need to build for this part of the season, and they know that just doesn't happen through the starting players or just the coaching staff, but the supplementary, you know, the cast of characters throughout the entire roster. And then what I want to spotlight about Mookie Betts as well, there's an at-bat versus Yohan Duran later in the game. I think it was in the 7th, because they put Duran in the 7th inning because that was the highest leverage situation. And he draws a walk, bases loaded walk, to put them up.
Yep.
In probably the most pressure-filled situation in the game. And I think sometimes that's seen as a bit of an anticlimactic moment. It's not the big hit that puts you ahead, but it's the elite level takes on 98 to 101 and fighting pitches off at the top of the zone, and then taking that pitch and a 3-2 count that would then push the run in. I think the Dodgers are stacked with players like this, and I think Mookie Betts is the primary example of a winning player, and I think that's why you see the Dodgers where they're at, and they're my favorite. I know it's easy to have them as the favorite, but it's hard to root against them, to be honest.
Yeah, I pulled up Durant's. This is a smaller sample size, but since he got traded to the Phillies, this is regular season, 20 innings, 1 walk. So, I mean, he was on a pretty high level.
The right guy for that spot.
Oh, yeah.
The Dodgers were better in that moment. They executed better in that moment.
So that'll be a team to watch. Obviously, not really breaking news there, but the little things and the big things interesting with the Dodgers. The Blue Jays gotten credit for these little things. And I wanted to hit on some discussion that right when the Blue Jays eliminated the Yankees, David Ortiz, who you know, Alex Rodriguez, Derek Jeter, you know, 3 pretty good players there.
Yeah, I've heard of them.
Yeah. And they had a long discussion about situational hitting becoming more valuable in the postseason. A-Rod was very emphatic about batting average, important, which I know is not your favorite stat, but just conceptually, he was saying that that's more important. This is a guy who hit quite a few home runs, more important in the postseason. And I think with the Toronto, maybe I underestimated their power in terms of their slug. They were 7th in slug during the regular season, so they can hit.
Yeah, they can bang.
They can bang too, but they were the highest batting average team. I did believe that productive outs, they led in the league as well. So it's not so much maybe home runs bad. Yankees hit a lot of home runs is a bad thing. It's more of just, hey, we should put more weight on this particular skill set for the playoffs, which is contact and being able to get productive outs. At least that's what the discussion was from them. On the Blue Jays, what do you say as far as the importance of hitting, not just power in the whole package, just putting the bat on the ball, situational in the postseason versus the regular season?
I think batting average gets overvalued over the course of 162. But over the course of a playoff series, it's really every out or you not making an out, which is what batting average is. It's you not making an out.
Right.
Right. You get credit for a walk, and that doesn't add to your batting average, but
Right.
It's not making an out.
Right.
And on base is equally important in postseason play. Like when you put traffic on, like these things get magnified. But I'm not going to sit here and try to tell those 3 Hall of Fame level dudes that's not a reality. Obviously, like they can speak directly to the fact that these things show up. And I think batting average does show up in the postseason because it's your ability to not make an out and convert at-bats into bases, at-bats into non-outs, and you don't have to smoke a ball in the gap, like a flare and a ball, and a ball crushed 116 on a one hopper to the right fielder. They carry equal value. Sometimes the flare allows the runner to advance yet another position. And so I think playoff baseball is a different beast. Now, my thing with batting average is that it's outcome versus process. That's why I think 162, you can lean more on process-based statistics. And I think over the course of a postseason, I think it's outcome driven, right? Like you're just looking for good outcomes. Now, I think it's very difficult to build for both. The Blue Jays happen to be built for both. And I think if you stack roster construction next to each other, it's hard to say that the Yankees are built better than the Blue Jays, looking at how the postseason played out and the fact that the Blue Jays were ahead of them over 162 as well. So I do think that kind of stuff shows up a little more in the postseason. I think batting average should be weighted a little more highly in the postseason. I just don't know how you do it. I don't know that there's things you need to do to be able to get you through 162. So if you went through last year's postseason, you're going to tell me like Stanton hitting 3-run bombs to like demoralize the opposing team. You're going to tell me that's not valuable in a postseason run? It is.
Right. Or Soler a couple of years ago, and he wins the MVP really just as a pure power hitter.
Right. I don't think anybody had it on their bingo card that Ernie Clement was going to be was going to lead them in all offensive categories through the first round of the playoff series. But here he is. Your defensive stalwart is, leading you in an offensive category in the postseason. Dalton Varsho also had a tremendous first series as well. So I don't know what to think of that. I think my answer will be like, if these three Hall of Fame caliber players value it and believe it's important, then I'll take their word for it. What I don't like, and I don't think those three guys do it, is I see a lot of takes online or on Twitter that it's like, oh, the bat, like we don't care about batting average anymore. We don't like, you're going to tell me Cal Raleigh and Kyle Schwarber weren't, offensive drivers or reasons that they're in these positions. Kyle Raleigh. Kyle Schwarber won a game single-handedly for them with the long ball, right? It's the reason the Phillies were competitive in that series is because of that home run.
Yep.
And Cal Raleigh, if you watch last night's game, power shows up again. So I don't think it's as clean as you should prioritize batting average over power, because I think power and a 3-run bomb has equally, if not a greater chance to impact or determine the outcome of a series. Yet the quality of the pitching in the postseason is so much more difficult to connect on. And that's why I think you see a spike in strikeout rates, because the quality of the caliber of the pitching, the relievers that you see, the intensity with which those relievers are coming in, they're not saving it for some later date, or for some later appearance. Like every out, every game, every out is magnified to an extent where you're seeing everybody's best stuff. And it's, if you're not shortening up a little bit, if you're not sacrificing a little bit, I think they call it taking an A swing versus a B swing, right? A B swing is more your 2-out, choked up swing to make sure you're not making an out. And I think, to me, and this is a bit of a subjective take, I think there are spots where you still have to let off your A swings in advantage counts when the count leverage is in your favor, right? But I also think it flips a little bit in postseason baseball to you making sure that you're making productive outs, that you're squaring balls up hard, that you're putting balls in play. Because at the end of the day, a strikeout is not doing anything for your team offensively. And so I do think that the scale slides a little bit, but not all the way to the compromising, slug and power. I mean, look what Vladdy did in the first. Like, we can talk about average all we want. Vladdy and Kirk putting them 400 feet, that has an impact as well. So there's no straightforward answer to that question. And I think that sometimes a little more of a traditional view of batting average allows you to be salty that it's not as prominent anymore.
Yeah, pulled up, slugging percentage from the regular season. Yankees number 1, Dodgers number 2. They're still around. Phillies number 4, Cubs number 6, Blue Jays, who we're talking about here, number 7. Mets just missed the playoffs, number 8. Then Red Sox and Mariners and Tigers and Brewers. so
you still got to hit. You still got to slug.
So yeah, those are all playoff teams for the most part. So I still need to. Ernie Clement, I want to get to this one because us being fans of ACC baseball, in our case, the Miami Hurricanes, watching the draft, I feel like there are Ernie Clements every year. So 5'11", 170 from Virginia, 4th round pick.
Yep.
Righty. I mean, I feel like we've seen this guy every year. Like Virginia has these guys all the time. And a lot of times nothing comes of it. And with him, it took a while. 29 years old. You look at his baseball savant, and it's one of the most unbalanced baseball savants you'll see.
You can pull this one up if you want, Junior.
Yeah, so fielding is all red. I mean, incredible range. Arm a little below par, but the fielding value overall is high. Then you look at the hitting, and xWOBA, xSlug, not high, barrel, hard hit, exit velo, bat speed, all those kind of twitchy things you don't see. And he's not walking a lot. However, 94th percentile whiff percentage, meaning he's avoiding the whiffs, 97th percentile K percentage, 97th percentile and squared up. There's nowhere average here, really. He is elite contact and bottom of the barrel, no pun intended, impact. And yet, here we go in the playoffs, and on top of the defensive value, he is producing in a major way with the bats. So like a guy like this, with this profile, it's not your favorite profile on paper. I mean, what do you do with his success?
This is a tough one because I think the thing that's not quantifiable here is what's happening between the ears, or what's happening, like, the heart, or, it's really difficult because the tool package, at least an offensive tool package, doesn't really draw you in toward the player. Low impact, high chase rate, really. But bats a ball. Elite bats a ball. We talked about Miguel Rojas in a lot of these ways as well, right? We're like very high contact rate, but a little bit of chase. So sometimes you're making contact on pitches you shouldn't necessarily be. And there's not a whole lot of impact behind that. And it's hard to sustain major league value over a long amount of time. But clearly the Blue Jays see and value what he does defensively at such a high level, right? And to a certain extent on the bases as well, that he merits and warrants a spot in this starting lineup, especially as you roll into the postseason where this is going to show up. I think the Blue Jays were also the best defensive team in all of baseball by a good margin as well, and I think that's in large part because of Ernie Clement. So really a team that's built a little bit, let's call it more balanced, right? Because they're 7th in slug, so it's not a team without offense, but a team that equally prioritizes defense, if not more than a lot of other clubs. And so I think this is a case of going back to the subjective part and what's between the ears, what kind of competitor this player is, that when the big moment shows up, he's able to capitalize on that bat to ball. Now, all of a sudden, if your lineup is full of punch, and you got a guy who doesn't punch, all of a sudden that shows up as more valuable. Now, that could show up, with runner on first and, ground ball to the shortstop, and it's a 6-4-3 double play. So that cuts the other way too. But I think he was just well positioned to have a really good series right when they needed him to, and he did. Like I said, he led them in the offensive categories, despite Vladdy having higher slug, but despite Vladdy having just a ridiculous. Vladdy dominated the Yankees in that series. I think he made it so that the Blue Jays were clearly the better team, despite a juggernaut offense on the other side of it. But talking about Ernie Clement, it's a guy capitalizing on a moment is what I'm seeing with the contact ability to do so. Now I don't know that that's like a bet that you make throughout the course of a postseason, right? And you don't all of a sudden think because he's had a good postseason that he's now a great offensive player over 162. But I don't know how to explain it other than a high level competitor, which is what he clearly is, capitalizing on a moment.
Let me ask you real quick on Vladdy. Would it be fair to say, I'll just throw some names out there, obviously a Judge in Ohtani, Juan Soto, Yordan Alvarez when he's healthy. Would you say this guy is a top 5 pure hitter? When I talk about not just the bat to ball, but the bat to ball with power, with swing decisions, just the pure hitting profile. Would you say fair to, at least he has an argument to be in the top 5 with, and I just named 4 that I think would be in that conversation with Ohtani, Judge, healthy Alvarez, and Juan Soto.
Yeah, I think just looking at dollars, contract dollars, I think he's in that discussion clearly. So I think that is one marker in his favor at 26 years old. And I think it passes the eye test as well as the metric test. So under the hood, over the hood, it looks right. He had one swing. He had one swing where he hit a ball, fastball away, and he hit it down the right field line. And I thought it was the best example of this might be the best pure hitter playing baseball in this moment, pure hit tool, right? Because any scout evaluating that would be like, okay, there's not a pitch that you're going to get by him. And if you locate a fastball on a 2-strike count up and away, he's still going to impact the baseball. He's not throwing the bat out there and making contact. It's like that ball is driven, sprayed hard to the right field corner. And I think that's a really a true indication of hit tool, your ability to impact the baseball to the opposite field gap in a non-advantage count. I think that shows it's a big indicator of a hit tool. And then you look at the Baseball Savant page.
It's all red.
There's no chase. There's no swing and miss. Everything's hit hard.
Bat speed, top of the scale, or close to it.
This is their offensive dude for sure. And then I think I saw George Springer show up as like it was like 5th or 6th in most postseason homers ever. So like it isn't just on Vladdy here. I mentioned Varsho having a hell of a year. The guy Lucas also had a really good postseason as well and showed up in big moments.
First year in the majors.
Incredible. And they're tough to root against right now, but then they got to hand it to him last night.
And no Bo Bichette, who probably second best pure hitter on the team. But yeah, ran into a tough Mariners team. This was my pick to come out of the AL just because of the Mariners. Now switch it to the Mariners just because the depth of pitching, right? I mean, Brian Wu, we talked about him on the show, just kind of what a phenom he was, going from what he was in college to what he is now. You take him out of the picture, and they still got tons of arms. Miller outstanding yesterday. First pitch, Springer takes him deep and then settles in. Got a great array of pitches. Munoz and Brash in the bullpen doing a great job. I want to talk about somebody who, one of my favorite pitchers, I saw him at Fenway last year, and he's fun to watch because of his style, is George Kirby. Just strike after strike after strike. A lot of great arms on this team. This is why I think really this team and the Dodgers are the teams with the deepest arsenal of, just the deepest lineup of pitchers that they can throw at you, starting caliber pitchers. But Kirby in particular, what do you like about his game? He gets lost sometimes, but what do you like?
Elite strike thrower with really good underlying stuff, right? So it's what's not to like about that? And it's not the most physically imposing, it doesn't, at least, he's 6'4", 215, but doesn't look like some of those other guys at 6'4", 215. But man, did he have a hell of an outing the other day to really boost them in to this postseason run. But a lot can go really well when you have above average movement with elite command. And I think that's what he's got. And that slider's nasty, man. That slider is throws it 27% of the time, comparable to the four seam that he throws 29% of the time. It's a really good fastball slider mix. And he uses both the four seamer and the sinker equally. And command with plus movement gets you to good spots. And that's what I see with him. And the Mariners have a type. I can really almost describe each of their starting pitchers in that vein, and it would be true. So especially with George Kirby, and hitting on a first round pick. Sometimes we get caught up in talking about like, oh, this guy got picked in the 4th, 5th, 6th. It's good to see. It's good to see a team hitting on their first round picks at this level of frequency, and I think that the Mariners deserve a lot of credit for what they've done with their pitching staff. Across the board, not just starters. Their relievers have been really, really good too. Yeah, just looking at some of these first round picks that they've made. I mean, really the two big ones, George Kirby and Logan Gilbert, back-to-back right-handers out of college, out of small colleges, good programs, but Elon for George Kirby, Stetson here in Florida for Logan Gilbert. So back-to-back with those first rounders, and we'll see. I mean, they got the switch pitcher, our boy Durangelo from Mississippi State, originally from South Florida via Curacao, and then Griffin Hughes from Miami. So a lot of guys that we're familiar with. Of course, Kate Anderson
in that mix as well. Forgot they got him, man. Talk about the rich getting richer. This is going to be a very interesting team to watch for a while. But this is an opportunity with the lineup they've developed through trades and whatnot. I mean, this is kind of go time, right, for the Mariners. It's not do or die, but you don't want to let this one go, do you?
No, this is their moment, and with your best player also carrying you offensively, right? Cal Raleigh carrying them last night, putting them on the board first. He's a beast, man. That guy. It's funny because it's one of those players that doesn't impress you that much his first go round to the big leagues. Yet I can't remember a player getting this much better at that position while already being an elite platinum glove level defender. And yet now all of a sudden attaching 60 home runs to that and performing in the postseason from an even split as a switch hitter, right? Like equal contribution, doesn't matter what side of the split he's on. And then he put a ball the other day in that 15-inning game against the Tigers. He had a caught stealing where he put that ball right. Like it was, you cannot draw up a better throw than the one that he made. And it was the only way it would have gotten the guy out. Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like talk about showing up in the most necessary moments, as well as guiding that pitching. We can talk a lot about the pitching staff and the quality of it, and they deserve a lot of the credit, but also Cal Raleigh deserves a lot of that credit too, managing that entire pitching staff. Including those relievers. The relievers showed up.
Oh, yeah.
The guy, Bizzardo, had a couple like incredibly crucial innings for them. Especially in that 15-inning game. And then they had a really good mix of utilizing Castillo, utilizing Gilbert out of the pen, and getting results out of that. I think that's not just a front office making decisions. That's not just a manager and a coaching staff making decisions. I think that's a true leader on your roster at the catching position, kind of shepherding that group of young pitchers through that situation. And I think he deserves a lot of credit. That's why if Aaron Judge got the MVP, I think that's more than deserved. But I think if Cal Raleigh got it, I wouldn't blink at that too. I think it's still going to be Judge, but I think I'm a big fan of Cal Raleigh, and I wasn't initially at his first go around through the big leagues.
Shout out to Yasser there in the chat saying what's up from the Canary Islands. This to me, and we talk a lot of ACC baseball, and probably more than people want to hear on this show just because we're so deep in the college baseball, University of Miami and this, but it plays into a lot of the major league discussions. Cal Raleigh, I don't want to say where he went, but it's a school in the state of Florida that's had success with catchers.
Yep.
But here's what I wanted to point out. Just for those who follow prospects and get discouraged at times. His second year, so this is his freshman year finishes. He goes to the Cape Cod, and then goes back to Florida State. At Cape Cod after his freshman year, he had a good freshman year, 10 home runs. Goes to the Cape, 204, slugged 255 over 27 games, 519 OPS at the Cape. Comes back to Florida State in the ACC with the juiced up bat. OPS 728, slug 398. This is after having a monster freshman year. Bounces back his junior year, but ultimately because of that inconsistency, third round pick. So it's not a straight line with some of these guys. You would never looked at that sophomore year performance and that K performance and said, this guy's going to hit 60 plus home runs as a switch hitting catcher in the major leagues. It's amazing. We've seen this with Judge too. Some of these big guys that have the raw power, but the production is not there in college. It's not necessarily an indicator of how it's going to go, right? I mean, they can grow. So that caught my eye.
Yeah, and I think I wouldn't have put all my chips into this happening this way. That said, we talk about, people must get sick of me mentioning swing decisions and all this, but like if you look at a through line through his entire career, really, it's an ability to get on base. It's hard to make accurate swing decision assessments by just looking at walks to strikeouts, but that's like the one thing that you can grab onto and be okay. Yes, there's some swing and miss here, but there's an ability to get on base. And if there's an ability to get on base consistently, that means there's an ability to see the ball and understand what's a strike and what's not, right? And that can allow you to put up with swing and miss. Now, so long as he's not chase missing at a high clip, you start chase missing in addition to in zone missing, then you're shit out of luck, really. But like the fact that he's always gotten on base, you see that pretty consistently throughout his career, including his minor league career. I think that's what allows the bat to catch up. It allows your bat to develop, especially at the catcher position, where a lot of the emphasis is placed on your development, your defensive development. Right. What I think we're seeing happening here is his swing decisions allowing his natural raw power to catch up to his perhaps lagging hit tool. And once that hit tool catches up, there's power there and there's good decision making there. That's where I think we've seen an obvious uptick. But I think there's an unknown here, which is I don't know how a player gets this much better over the course of such a seemingly small amount of time, but he did. All right. And that's where do you place that credit? I think the lion's share goes to Cal Raleigh, but I think a lot of it goes to whatever's happening with Seattle's development of him in particular. Like whatever their hitting coaches are doing with him in particular in the offseason, or since he's been in the minor leagues, whatever the hitting coordinator is doing, whatever the concerted plan is to leverage this player's swing decisions to tap into his power has worked fantastically, all while not sacrificing or punting on the elite defensive abilities, winning platinum gloves. It's kind of ridiculous. Has really quickly grown into one of my favorite players in the big leagues.
And not just development on the hitter side with Seattle. I mean, we talked about the pitching. Brian Wu being probably the biggest example of somebody who, like Riley, more so than Riley, really had struggles in college, did not get drafted particularly high given what he became, right, and then developed into that. And even a guy like Julio Rodriguez, he was a top prospect in baseball, superstar from the jump, but he had his best season this year in his fourth season. So it's not like he's been on a straight line or a downward slope. He really put it all together this season, one of the best players in the game. So my pick to come out of the AL, it'll be fun to watch. Go ahead.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I also think that the Mariners deserve their flowers too. Their two trade deadline acquisitions, and Naylor was a huge force for them. I can't believe he stole third in that crucial situation. Which speaks to like base stealing isn't just speed. Base stealing is like instincts. And sometimes big guys have good instincts. You just don't get to see it that often, because they're not, their sprint speeds don't allow them to take a whole lot of chances. Well,
before you get off that, 30 steals on the year. So it's not like it was an isolated event.
That shows big instincts.
Sprint speed, bottom 3 percentile in all of baseball.
That means there is some high level instincts happening there. I think that you see him in the box, in the batter's box. He's got some really high level instincts, and just super hitterish. Naylor, original Marlin.
I mean, Naylor and Castillo could have helped the Marlins this year.
It never works that way, but yes.
I know they've been long gone by now anyways, but man. Given what they got for him.
Eugenio Suarez has been a huge piece for them, especially in that second half push, and it gives you an experienced offensive force. What did he hit? Almost 50 home runs this year. Yeah. Not to mention Julio Rodriguez having a nice season, but I wanted to spotlight. It's nice when your deadline acquisitions actually, do the thing that you're hoping that they did, right? Because without those two guys, they're not the offensive. They're kind of an imbalanced offense with really Raleigh and Julio carrying a lot of that on their shoulders. But Naylor, it's funny because I was watching that game with Skubal, and I thought Naylor took by far the best swings against Skubal of anybody in that lineup, and it showed up. He had a rocket to center field. Then he also had like a check swing opposite field double that would then set up the steal of third to then get pushed in by a sac fly. I think that they have a really nice, well-constructed roster. And I'm also a big fan. I think JP Crawford is really underrated. I think on both sides of the ball, I think he's underrated. I think this year, we talked about it in the last episode, one of the better hitters with runners in scoring position throughout the course of the regular season. So just a really good club, a really well-balanced club. And I didn't think they'd have this much offensive. I didn't think they'd have enough offensive punch, right, throughout the rest of the lineup outside of Raleigh and Rodriguez, but they've shown otherwise here, and they're up 1-0 now.
I mean, the best in the trades. I mean, Naylor, Eugenio, and then last year you get a Rosarena who this year probably had his best season ever, or at least close to it. And we know what he's capable of doing in the postseason. He's someone that's been there before, which a lot of these guys haven't, at least turns out to play really at the whole team. So that will be interesting to watch. Feels like he's got a couple moments up his sleeve here as we get deeper into the championship.
He's got
series.
that big game aura, so you kind of expect him to always do something significant in a big moment. And even if it's been a slightly sleepy postseason to this point, I think he's a guy that if you're preparing on the other side, you're preparing to attack the Seattle Mariners. That's not a guy you're comfortably pitching to, knowing his track record of postseason history.
Brewers, switching gears, a really interesting team. Don't hit home runs. They don't spend a lot of money. All they do is win, and win in interesting ways. To me, I'm focused on the bullpen just because it was so huge for them against the Cubs. Look at Misaelowski. We talked about him. I mentioned K-Rod. Again, K-Rod was starter, I guess, in the minors, but he was not like a guy who started in the majors and then went to the pen like Sasaki, like Misaelowski. But that's the energy you get with some of these guys. First rookie out the pen to win their first 2 postseason games of his career since K-Rod for Misaelowski. Look at the numbers in the NLDS. 7 innings pitched, 4 hits, 1 earned run, 2 walks, 7 strikeouts, touched 104. Game 5, he was huge. Maybe we see him start now in the National League Championship Series. I heard that's on the table. Sure. We'll see what happens there.
He's built up lengthwise, so he can. I think that's the biggest, what allows you to either think about him as a starter or reliever is where their buildup is. Right. You can't just all of a sudden ramp a guy up to 4 innings if he's been pitching 1 inning this whole way through. So I think they've kept him in a starter capacity all the way through, and have now tactically deployed him in a bullpen capacity. The throttle up and down, I think, is a little bit dangerous, but I think all the chips are in if you're the Milwaukee Brewers. So I think all options are on the table here. And I think you're right. I think there's something really different, K-Rod-esque, you can call it, right?
Just the juice. Like
relief aces come across almost every postseason where a guy will pop up. It's easier to do it when your stuff looks like this. But what's important here is that the command has been in place throughout this run of postseason dominance, right? Like, you can have the best stuff that you want. But if your command isn't tight in the postseason, it can go sideways on you really fast. The last thing you can tolerate as a manager in a postseason run is being behind in counts, walking guys like that. That can crush you, and that hasn't been the case for him. So, it does feel like they have definitely a relief ace when they need it, but also could be as impactful in a starting capacity. We'll see.
And the pen is definitely not bearing behind him. No. Look at Trevor McGill. I was laughing because he had that. He started the first inning and perfect first inning, but it was like he closed the game. Yep. The velo was like he's closing the game. His energy, he was celebrating like he just won the game. It was the first inning. So I guess you put a closer no matter where you put them. Back of the guy, high leverage guy. You put him anywhere, they're going to be a high leverage guy, even if it's the first inning. Aaron Ashby had a very big strikeout of Kyle Tucker. Yeah, he had some nice stuff there. That was a very timely one. Chad Patrick, guy I'd never heard of, acquired for Abraham Toro, ended up being huge, really, for the Brewers in multiple games, but certainly last series. And then Abner Uribe, who we've talked about on this show. The note I have is just elite reliever, period. I mean, when you just look at the whole body of work, what he brings to the table, he's just, to me, at this point, we talked about him when he was first showing the signs.
Yeah.
Now it seems like he's there. It's just this is who he is.
Junior, can you show this screen right here? Because I think it's a ridiculous baseball savant page for Abner Uribe. Because it's a elite K rate, elite whip rate, but also elite ground ball rate, right? His walk rate is in the 30th percentile, but everything else, kind of like what we talk about when Tanner Scott's really good. Yep. It's like, okay, you carry like a slightly high walk rate, but every other outcome is either strikeout or ball on the ground. And he's got that. Like, you don't want to see him at the back end of a game. That's filth. That's I don't want to, especially like a right on right matchup for right-handed pockets of hitters. I think Brewers, man, they would get I don't like to only attribute awards to those that do the most with the least. I think you need to do well with a lot of money as well. And that's why I still think the Dodgers are always hard to top, because I think they do well with a lot of money. But I think the Brewers are probably I think you'll see at the end of the year, Matt Arnold and the front office of the Brewers get the accolades in terms of, front office awards and things like that. And I think they deserve it.
No question about it. Obviously, tough loss for the Cubs in that series. That the rivalry there gets even stronger. Stat that you hear from Cubs fans: 5 for 40 with runners in scoring position, 125. I want to ask you from a front office standpoint, when you struggle like that with runners in scoring position in the playoffs, really cost you an opportunity to move forward. But it's not an area necessarily you struggled with during the season.
Right.
Top 5 in average OPS with runners in scoring position over the 162. So when the playoffs go sideways in such a critical way, do you say, man, maybe we need to acquire just some more veteran pure hitters that excel in this situation? Or do you just say, hey, smaller sample, we go over the 162. I don't think this is our problem. Like, how do you attack something like that that's where the wound is fresh in a tough loss to a rival in the playoffs?
I think the easy answer is to try to overcorrect, right? And I don't think that that's where the truth lies. I think there's some value, definite value in having some playoff experience. I don't have the numbers in front of me of how Kyle Tucker did in this. Obviously, a guy with extensive.
Had some moments, Had
some moments. Dansby Swanson, guy with extensive. He played his ass off defensively.
Yeah.
That guy might be my favorite defensive shortstop outside of Mookie Betts. But
best middle infield, would you say, in the game?
Defensive middle infield?
Yeah,
maybe. I don't know if the metrics back that up, but the eye test.
Yeah, I mean, your boy Nico. How are you saying
Nico
it?
Horner?
Our boy, how's
Nico
our boy
Horner.
Roberts?
Shout out to him podcast. But I think that to your question about them not showing up with runners in scoring position, I don't know what to attribute that to. They had a really good regular season with big moments. They have big moment players, but it just didn't happen for them. But I don't know that the answer is to all of a sudden try to correct for that, because maybe you lose what made them good over 162 and it keeps you on the outside looking in.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I got to tell you what, I really love Seiya Suzuki. He showed up for them. That guy's underrated. I think he's probably one of the better right-handed hitters in baseball. And I think he's to me, when I think about like Japanese baseball being here, I think about Seiya Suzuki a lot, because we talk about it a lot with Ohtani. Let's put him to the side. But in terms of Japanese offensive players having success here, I really like Seiya Suzuki a lot. I just think sometimes you just don't do it. Like, you just don't come up in the spot that you need to, despite being a guy known for coming up in big spots throughout the regular season. I don't know what to attribute that to. I don't know they play good defense. They run the bases well. They pitch it okay. I thought that there was a gap between the pitching. And sometimes you just run into a buzzsaw that is good pitching.
Yeah.
The Brewers, they got it going right now. And they're interesting too, because guys like Jose Quintana can show up and still, like, lefties, crafty lefties like that have had like long careers bouncing from team to team. There's no way to put my finger on why he's been so effective for so long, but the Brewers, they have a good, I don't know if it's a secret sauce, but whatever they're doing with their pitchers right now is really effective. And I think that the Cubs ran into the buzzsaw that was the Brewers.
You talked about Suzuki, very small sample size, but Yoshida had some big hits for the Red Sox as well. Yep. I think of a guy like Munetaka Murakami, who's going to post now, who's, again, talk about just kind of hit first Japanese players. Where does he fit in? He's not the guy that's going to wow you with his physique or his speed. He's really there for his hitting, from what I understand. Yeah. But representing the Swallows here. He was injured when I was out there, but he'll be posted here. That'll be interesting.
Roki Sato.
Oh, that day was the 2028 when he finally is eligible to come over.
Guy,
we'll be all
he
over
hit the
that
40
one.
home run mark. I just want to be on record that we've been talking about him for a long time. Since the original.
Oh yeah, he was the first guy.
He was the first guy we mentioned of the NPB spotlight. Hold on, let me see what he finished with. We're going off topic here now, but
we got
finished with 40 home runs, 102 RBIs, and a 924 OPS on the season, to lead so many categories in the NPB. But yeah, I think you said he's a 2028 eligible for posting.
Yeah,
we're definitely going to see him in the WBC.
There wasn't that much clarity, but that was what it looked to be.
Their WBC roster is going to be, if all those guys participate, it's not going to be pitching dominated. It's going to, those guys are stacked. I think they got to be the favorite.
The 3-time champs, Murakami at third, Sato. Obviously, you have Ohtani, Suzuki, Yoshida. Who else do they got? I mean, obviously, the pitching is basically the Dodgers plus. So, yeah, I don't know who's still over there besides Sato and Murakami, who's coming over now, but I had to shout him out with my Yakult Swallows shirt there. Finishing off with the Detroit Tigers. I mean, this one, the team we spotlighted, I know you have friends in the organization.
I was rooting for him.
Yeah, it was a fun game. Skubal, I don't know what more you could say other than it felt like in that game he threw the same pitch, that high fastball in the zone. He threw it so many times in a row, and it could not. They knew it was coming. They knew where it was going, and
yeah, but you don't know if it's the fastball or the splitter or the changeup, I should say. That's the tough part. That's what gets me about him. Like, it's, to me, yes, the velocity is obviously there, right? And it's an elite pitch because of its velocity. I don't think it's an elite pitch because of its movement profile. I think it's elite because of how it plays off of the changeup. I think you have the changeup in your mind. You know the velocity, the elite velocity is in there. He doesn't walk you. He's not going to walk you. So he's going to challenge you. And you're right. It's that elevated fastball. But when you think that bottoming out changeup's also going to come, like that fastball all of a sudden plays a lot harder. And then if you look at that game against Seattle, you look at how many bad swings by good hitters are taken against that changeup. When I think of Skubal, I think of the changeup, right? And that's why I think from a development standpoint, if you can develop an above average changeup, it opens up your entire profile as a pitcher, because it always gives you a weapon against the opposite split, right? For a lefty to have that kind of weapon against a right-handed split I think it's part of the reason you see the results that you see. And yeah, 98 to 101 to 102, holding that velo into the 6th and the 7th inning. He's a beast, man. I think he's going to be a Cy Young contender here. Probably a favorite for the Cy Young every year, barring some sort of injury. But it's the changeup, I think, that allows the fastball to play at an even higher level, because movement-wise, it's not some like crazy movement profile fastball. It's good, but the changeup, being elite, allows it to play up to an elite level.
In 98th percentile fastball run value, but then 100 percentile off-speed run value. The pitch mix is interesting. I mean, again, I'm looking as a layperson. You tell me, for a guy of this caliber who is a dominant swing and miss starter, only 15% on the breaking ball as far as the usage, 12% slider, 3% curve. Who's another guy of this caliber that you can think of, the starting pitcher, that was so dominant without having that breaking ball? That, not saying that it has a bad breaking ball, but it's not a huge part of what he does.
Johan Santana stands out. It was the elite changeup that carried the profile. He didn't have this kind of velocity, but he generated this kind of swing and miss with the changeup. They're few and far between. I'm sure I'm missing a bunch of guys, or I'm not thinking about guys whose elite changeup just carries. David Price, was one. It wasn't like a banger breaking ball, but it was a really, really good changeup with some velocity, left-handed. Kurt Schilling's that splitter in the Schilling days, that was filthy too. The splitter being a version of a changeup. They're both in the off-speed category. But it's hard. It has to be a really elite pitch for you to pitch with the bulk of it. Junior, pull this guy's Savant page up, por favor. And you're right. It's a 15% usage of a breaking ball. But yet the breaking ball is still in the 80th percentile.
Right.
But I think all of his pitches play up because of the quality of that changeup. That changeup is in the 100th percentile. That means it's literally the best, most effective changeup in the world. And I don't know, you asked me that question. Johan Santana stands out. But I'm sure I'm missing a bunch of guys, and people can get on me about that. But having that elite changeup puts him in an elite category. And
I'm wondering, just looking at the pitch usage, just how much more use that slider. It doesn't seem to be a huge difference. It's a difference, but it's not like, that slider's only going against lefties, right? It's not like that. Like, he's still getting lefties out with just the standard fastball and change. So fun to watch. Skubal. We'll wait till next year to see him again. Overall, the Tigers offense fizzled down the stretch. Baez, we know he's up and down. He was fun to watch as always, but just in general, do you think this team is maybe a pure hitter away? Or like, what do you see as far as this team retooling for another run with a guy like Skubal leading the charge? Yeah, I think that they're a bat or two away from being where they want to be. I thought their bullpen was really good too throughout the course of the year. Starting pitching strong overall, especially led by Skubal. But yeah, they
Kerry Carpenter is not the name you think of to carry your offense, but he did. He was for a large part of it carrying the offense. But they also didn't really show up offensively in that series against Seattle. Right? Like they really struggled to score runs. We talked about how good their pitching was, so give that due credit. But you know, their Riley Greens, their Torkelsons, like those guys didn't really step up, right? It's no knock on them. They're facing really good pitching in the postseason, but they a lot of over, however, throughout the course of that series, and they're not a team with a whole lot of margin to work with offensively. So I think they'll be here for a while. I think that division is theirs to not to run away with, but they're going to stay competitive in that division for a good amount of time. But yeah, to me, they're a bat or two away from being in that next conversation.
Well, let me ask you, the best bat, arguably, in the minor leagues, at least from could that be a difference maker next year? I mean, it's just putting what you saw in the playoffs, and then if he is what he's been track record wise, does he move the needle for him?
I think he definitely moves the needle. I don't know that you can put all your chips into a rookie performance to be at the heart of your offensive surge. But I think that in combination with a well-timed trade or free agency move, I think the offense has to be squarely addressed in terms of, you know, where the gap was. And again, one well-placed hit, and we're talking about the Tigers the way we've been talking about Seattle.
Yeah.
It really did come down to that at the very end. So it's the Tigers are here for a little while.
Yeah, a lot of close games, a lot of action. Really enjoying the playoffs, and we'll break down every single series here on out, and a lot of off-season starting, and we're going to be your home all off-season. Hot stove, you name it, we will be covering it here on El Big League Show. So like and subscribe. We'll see you next week.
Sheesh.